Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Let's talk about plants, yeah? Perfect. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, yes, I am Friday. She, her pronouns. I am a tea witch, agro dweeb. Welcome to Anatomy of a Tea Plant. And thank you all for coming out. I was expecting like maybe 10 people to be interested in this talk. So, yikes. I'm so happy you're all here. So, yes. Let's talk about some freaking plants real quick, okay? By quick, I mean an hour. This is Anatomy of a Tea Plant. We're going to talk about biology today. There's a nice picture of a tea plant. So, for those who are brand new to the tea world, we're going to have to give you a little introduction about what exactly is tea. Camellia Sinensis, who is she? All right, so we are talking about one plant. We have one plant that all true tea comes from, right? This is a thing that is kind of tea 101, but we'll do a quick brush through just in case we have some brand new friends here. So tea itself, all true tea comes from the Camellia Sinensis plant. This is an evergreen shrub that is native both to China, in the case of the Camellia Sinensis subclassification Sinensis, or India, specifically Assam, hence subclassification Assamica. And we'll walk through a little bit here the difference between those two primary varietals. We know that tea itself is one plant, that beautiful, beautiful baby that you saw on that front page, gorgeous evergreen shrub. So the difference here is that the Sinensis subvarietal Sinensis is native to China. It is used to those high altitudes. It's used to very rocky soil, tight slopes, and naturally, because of those high altitudes to which it is native, it's going to grow much smaller leaf styles. This is the most important thing to know about the distinction here. Sinensis sinensis, small leaf Chinese style. Sinensis assamica, lowland native, adapted to much more lush, warm, wet, shaded areas at very low altitudes there in Assam, India, which is really a jungly region. So we see, because there's more oxygen availability and a lot more plentiful, diverse nutrients in the soil, the plant is able to grow much larger leaves. This is super important. Small leaves from China, large leaves from India, and then all other tea has kind of, spawned, whether, natively or through human interference from there. So, we just talked about that. Yay, I did. Good job, me. So 2 major varietal families. We make tons and tons of cultivars from there. So really the important things to remember about the plant herself is we've got Camellia Sinensis, our big mommy tea plant, right? Everyone comes from there. And then we've got our Sinensis sinensis, small leaf style, Sinensis assamica, large leaf style, and then from there, whatever the heck farmers and agricultural scientists want it to be. So we're starting to see hybridization, the last couple hundred years, for tea, that's new. So we're seeing hybridization, particularly in the Americas here. The tea plants that came to North America a few hundred years ago and seeded the tea plantations that we see North Carolina and now migrating over here to the West Coast itself are going to be a hybrid style that are designed to adapt to a much more diverse range of terroirs. And then even within, say Sinensis, you're going to get things like your milky oolong cultivars, right? They've been bred or grafted or, whatever, to have specific notes, specific things going on that lend themselves to specific different styles of processing and production. And that's how we end up with things like milk oolong. That's how we end up with things like silver needle, golden monkey, our golden Yunnan. I'm a sucker for the golden tipped trichome heavy teas, so you're going to hear a lot about golden this and that. Yes, so just as we've said, different phytochemicals. You're going to walk away from here talking about phytochemicals, and everyone's going to think you're a freaking genius, so you're welcome for that in advance. That's a good party trick. Bust out the word phytochemicals, and everyone thinks you're the smartest in the room. So phytochemicals just meaning, what chemicals are naturally present in the plant's composition. It just means plant chemicals. But the different phytochemicals, we will go through what ones develop different aromas, flavors, mouthfeels, etc. And the most important thing, I'm going to say that about everything as well, is that you need to know that every phytochemical is in reaction to something. We love our plants stressed out, okay? Right? So the things that we love the most about our tea plants are actually hormonal or chemical reactions, giving them those distinct aromas, giving them those distinct flavor and mouthfeel, and a lot of that comes from stress, so we'll look at that. Now, this is just a cute little side note that I think is interesting. Most farms do prefer cloning or grafting over growing from seed, and that is because tea itself is a remarkable genius of mutation. I know a few folks here in Washington were going to know about this. Apple seeds are the same way. We're seeing a lot of lots of nods. Okay, we're all apple farmers. It's just part of being Washingtonian. So a big thing that is known about apples is that you can have a really wonderful apple cultivar, and you can grow in the same conditions on the same plot of land a brand new seedling from a seed from that apple, and it'll be its own guy, right? It's not going to do the same stuff because they have remarkable mutation capabilities from generation to generation, and the same is true for tea. So you can bred a tea plant to have very specific qualities, because for a crop that comes from such a commodity background, right? Tea is for making money for the government, if we look historically, you know? So for that, when you're growing a commodity crop, consistency is so key. You need to be able to sell 100 kilos of a very specific flavor profile to your international buyers, right? So we have a lot of farms that are working with specifically patented genetic code, right? That has been cloned, or breeds that have been grafted together to create, hybrid trees that are growing for specific types of flavors and aromas. Almost never will you see a farm that is working from seed, because it's unpredictable. I am seeing a little bit lately, and I want to see more, these renegade experimental tiny farms that are just going for it. They're the chefs of the tea world. They're the winemakers of the tea world. Wine, okay, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we've got our traditional ones there too. But I'm from renegade wine country. I'm from the land of small wineries where people do whatever the heck they want any given year, and you never know what you're going to get. And I'm excited to see more of that in the tea world. But for now, it's safe to assume your tea plants are cloned and or grafted. That's what we're doing. Oh, let's talk about extremities, shall we? Okay, so we're going to talk about body parts, plant body parts a lot, but we're going to start big and then go microscopic. So let's talk about tea flowers. How beautiful they are is, I think, the most important thing about them. But also it's cool to know, why are they so beautiful to us, right? So we have this gorgeous open flower, and you can see the pollen on this sucker is really just right out there. It's very easy to brush against and get pollen all over yourself. And the plants know, they're so intelligent, they know when to open it up that much, and that is a key pollination time. This is primarily a beetle pollinated plant, right? So you're seeing a lot of beetles climbing up on there and dusting their little tummies on there, right? And climbing onto the next one. And so plant pollination in this family really relies on these huge open flowers with really cleanly available pollen right there on the outside. So our cute little beetles hardly even have to do anything. They just get to have a little dust bath and then move on. So some of the hormones that we're going to talk about in a little bit here are aromatics. They are actually out there doing the flower thing. The smell of flowers, right? They smell for a reason. Everything a plant does has a reason. In this case, it is to attract pollinators. And so I really love that we do see, you'll see a note here, that the aromatic hormones in the tea and native companion plants. That's very important. Tea naturally wants a very biodiverse environment. Where you see a lot of farms struggling to keep their tea plants well pollinated is when we get into monocropping, monoculture, right? Which is, I have big feelings about that. That's a different talk. But what we see a lot in more heritage sites, more permaculture sites for farms, and more really old school tea farming regions, you will see a lot of letting the weeds just do their thing in between the rows. You'll see a lot of encouraging of the local insect populations to come around, because tea thrives in a complex ecosystem with broad biodiversity. That's one of the reasons that when I'm sourcing tea, one of the only certification stamps I really care about on a tea farm is the Rainforest Alliance stamp, because a certain amount of biodiversity is required to qualify for that stamp. And biodiversity is something that tea plants really need, and without them you rely more on pesticides, on artificial hormones, on fertilizers, things like that. When you could just have cute little flowers and native companion flowers. Now let's talk about our seeds here. Look at that weirdo. My favorite thing about the tea fruit is, look at it. It looks like it's from outer space. That's so good. So the tea fruit, I feel like I need to put in quotes because there's not really much flesh to speak of here, right? We've got these gorgeous, dense, super fibrous seed pods that can survive harsh overwintering, temperatures. And when they first open, there's these hard balls in there, pit, three little hard, two to three little hard pits right on in there, and that's the tea seed. They are the coolest. So these guys, they haven't really most of the time been bred to spread themselves. You know, we're working a lot, like I said. Our tea plants have been mostly working from grafts and from clones for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the ones that you'll mostly see, the fruits themselves have no real, they're not designed to do much of anything. They just look like they're from outer space, which is also cool. We do see a lot of tea seed use in contemporary tea farms as a secondary revenue source for our small farms, which we love, because tea seeds themselves are full of really beneficial botanical phytochemicals for skincare, right? So we get a lot of that. A lot of the tea seeds are going into the beauty industry, and the farmers are using them as a secondary revenue source. Yes, good, we love that. All right. Now, where's my coffee? There it is. That's big. Tea seeds, yes. So, as we already talked about, super mutable. You could take this seed from this plant, plant it right dang next door, treat it exactly the same way, and it would be a completely different guy. It's like your children are not yourself, you know? So that's why we do our clones. Amazing. All right. Oh, leaves. I love this picture. This is actually from one of the farms that we work with in Japan, from the Hattori matcha estate in Shizuoka, and their leaves are just so lush because they are shade grown, which is important. Everything's important. I hope you're listening. So our tea leaves go through a whole life cycle that is so fascinating, and we as consumers need to understand all the different phases of a tea leaf's growth cycle so that we can know what time of year. This is when knowing what season of pick you like comes into the picture, right? I know personally that I like my Yunnan teas to be summer picked, and I know personally that I like my Darjeeling teas to be spring picked, you know? I don't hate an autumn picked Darjeeling, but it's got a little something different going on, and that's because the age of the leaves, in addition to obviously many other factors. So tea leaves, being of, you know, this waxy evergreen type plant, right? We have these thick, waxy, hardy, very tough, dense leaves, and you almost never drink those. Gross. There's a reason for that. So what we are drinking most of the time, you'll see tea represented as the first two leaves in the bud, right? That's a thing we hear over and over and over. First two leaves in the bud. And that's because once a tea has time to age a little bit on the branch, that wax coat starts to develop. They're not born with it. When tea leaves sprout, they have that tea fuzz on them, right? That soft trichome. Which is protected. We like the delicate leaves. We like the vulnerable leaves because they have all those gorgeous aromatics. They have that delicate, you know, complexity, that nuance of flavor because they are busy. Babies are busy, right? They need to be growing, so they have a lot of chemical energy going on. And we as humans love the taste of hormones, frankly. So at different ages, you'll see different, you know, interior chemical composition and chemical development occurring, and you will find that you have a preference for certain phases of leaf hormonal development over others, which is very cool. So as they get bigger, and I actually had a chance to play with some tea leaves down at the Minto Island farm in Oregon a few months ago. We got to pick and process some green tea down there, and it was incredible how some of the leaves that were just even, you know, maybe a week older were already too tough to use. And so as we were, you know, bruising and rolling and all these things, our leaves came out the other side, and they were beautiful, twisted, wiry, lovely little green tea leaves. And every now and again, there was one sucker that snuck through. Like, you were too old to be here, but you snuck through, and it just doesn't do what you want it to do. It's just stubborn. It's set. So your older tea leaves become set, right? There we go. The younger the leaf, the more it needs protection. And as you know, humans, because we love poison, what is caffeine? It's poison. Yes, exactly. Caffeine is a natural insecticide that the plant develops to protect its youngest leaves. So if you actually look at, and we will look at some trichomes, that white fuzz on the outside of a tea leaf. If you look at it under a microscope, you can actually see the caffeine dripping off the trichomes, because that's where the plant stores it. That's where it's most in need. Tea plants are so intelligent. They adapt on the fly to, you know, to stresses in their environment, to changes in their conditions, to signals from other surrounding plants. They can smell each other. It's how they talk, right? Hormones are magical, and the tea plant is designed to be extremely adaptive to really tough environments. So what it does is it grows out this fuzz out of follicles, because that fuzz, it's not hair, it's a gland, right? And it grows it out when it needs it to protect it from the cold, from the sun, and from insects. So it's packed full of poison, caffeine, right? Because it's insect repellent, insect killer, frankly. And then, it also reflects the sunlight off. That's why we have our silver tips, our golden tips, why they look metallic. They're designed to reflect UV light so the baby leaves don't get sunburned, right? So yeah, that's you can kind of get a sense as you're going through your tea journey when you see a very small leaf with a lot of fuzz on it versus a large leaf that has no fuzz on it, which one's gonna mess you up worse, right? You know what I mean? You can look at that and say, okay, this fuzzy one might taste smoother. That does not mean the caffeine is lower here at all. At all. Older leaves are going to be lower in caffeine because it's not needed there anymore. And the plant is constantly shifting its priorities and pumping chemicals to where it's most needed. That's also why hojicha, right, made with twigs and stems, is naturally almost caffeine-free, very, very low, like milk chocolate and caffeine, because it's the stems. It's physically armored. It doesn't need the poison, so the plant doesn't bother to pump it there. Oh, roots. Okay. I'm so excited to have gotten a hold of this particular image. This was sent to me from a farm in Georgia, the country, not the state. And we're seeing a lot of new tea farms crop up in Georgia, and I'm very excited about that terroir. But this is the best picture I have ever seen of a Camellia Sinensis root system. So you can see here, what we get is a deep, deep taproot, right? This thing shoots down within the first year of the plant's life. Massive taproot. And then we get, where's my, robot, there we go. And then we get this gorgeous overroot system here. So the root system of the Camellia Sinensis is, of course, adapted to the region where it's native. And what we see is, because of shifting soils, right? If we're on a mountainside, you're going to get some rock falls. That nice top overroot is acting as netting, like you see on the side of the highway, right? Throw some chain link on that sucker so that the rock slide isn't as dramatic. It's kind of a similar concept here, where the overroot system is shooting tendrils down to kind of keep its grip, but rocks and dirt can shift under there and it has some flexibility on that front. And then we see, that massive taproot, because it has to sink itself way deep into the soil bed first. A lot of regions where tea is native and where it's contemporarily grown do struggle either with patches of aridity, right? It's too dry for a long time, so the soil can't build up a nice rich clay. So you get this very dry, very sandy kind of soil. So you need that taproot to go way down into the water bed and down into where the dirt is a little more solid that can be held. Because that way, when a flood comes through, if it's monsoon season or something, the whole thing doesn't get swept away. You know what I mean? But then that top root still gives it some room to gather nutrients from that topsoil, while still having that soil flexibility. So if it needs to move, it can move. So this is such intelligent design that I get so excited about this. You see a plant evolve in a way where it can shift and adapt as it needs to fit any kind of circumstance. And it's just so thrilling. It's so thrilling. And the root system really is very complex, because this is a plant that naturally grows in fairly acidic soil, right? But depending on the weather, depending on, whatever patterns are going on, how much sunlight is around, what is happening in the surrounding ecosystem. So say, another species dies off, and through that butterfly effect, now there's too much ammonia in the soil, right? That can happen. Okay, so we have internal systems that can detect when there's too much or not enough of a certain nutrient, and we can move the roots accordingly or draw from either the overroots or the taproot at more length to get what we need here. It's brilliant. It's like they've got brains in their feet. Love it. All right, we all have needs, right? It's the title of this next slide. I may have been sleep deprived putting this together. All right, so yes, plants, as we've kind of noted a little bit here looking at these root systems, we do have simple needs, right? However, we can adapt to meet them as needed. So the things that a plant really needs: the correct nutrients, the correct sunlight, air, water, and time, right? These are kind of the factors. And we're going to take a look momentarily at the combination of vascular structure, so basically blood vessels, right, but of a plant, and hormones that keep our plants going, and how they adapt to meet different environmental needs, and what that does to the aroma and the flavor. We are going someplace that you can actually use. This will become applied science shortly. Right now, it's just for the curious of mind. So yes, tea plants, and I will harp on this a lot because I think it's really important to understand that meeting its needs will change the flavor and the aroma. That is so important. There's a reason that we talk about terroir in this plant, right? Because you could take a clone of the same plant from, say, Sri Lanka, transplant it into the rainforest in Colombia, which is not a fake example, that's a real thing that happened, but and it's a totally different plant because the environmental stimuli are different. It has totally different needs in that environment, so that means that it needs to figure out how to adapt to its new environment, which means now it tastes and smells completely different, even if it's the exact same plant. This is a very sensitive agricultural product. Oh man, there's a stoma. Okay, we are going to talk about microscopic plant mouths. I meant to have that on a reveal so that I could give everyone a warning. This is one of my favorite parts of a plant. Stomata. Let's talk about freaky microscopic plant mouths. Stoma are microscopic, thank you. So this is a mouth in the underside of your tea leaves. Every tea leaf is covered in millions of tiny microscopic mouths. And I just always like to say it that dramatically because it's so cool. It's so science fiction. So the role of these mouths is these guys are the boss of photosynthesis, really is what it comes down to. These mouths control transpiration, the flow of water in and out of the plant from above. Of course, the roots are doing that from below, right? But these mouths, these stomata, are taking in water from the air so that the leaves themselves can have a higher or lower turgidity as needed, right? The more water that is in the vascular system, the xylem and phloem on the inside, right? The waterways inside the plant, the faster they can pump nutrients where they need to go, right? Whereas the less water that's in there, they go more slowly, travels more slowly through the plant. So this is very important. There's also a certain amount of water as well as oxygen CO2 balance that's needed for photosynthesis to take place. So what we see is, that was it. I went backwards. I'm so good at machines. So this is a really great example of an actual slide of some stomata. So you can see they do look like mouths and they move like mouths. It's thrilling to see actually live in a microscope. So there's an outer layer and an inner layer. It's kind of like a lip layer and a teeth layer, right? And they can control by opening and closing different layers how much oxygen is going out, how much CO2 is coming in, and how much water is going back and forth, right? So they can evaporate water out of their mouths, and they can also pull in water from the surrounding air. So what you're seeing, these green buddies around the lips, those are chloroplasts, right? Chloroplasts are the part of the cell that they do the photosynthesis, okay, is basically the way to say that. So these guys are in charge of photosynthesis, and they work in cooperation with the vascular system to make sure that those nutrients get where they need to go. But first, we get to talk about mesophyll layers, which, I'm extremely excited by this right now. So mesophyll is kind of the inside part of the leaf, right? All the spongy stuff between the upper and the lower skin. I say spongy because it is on a microscopic level. I think to us it's just, leaf stuff. But this is where all the flavors come from, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So we've got our stomata pulling stuff in, and this is thrilling. So this I got from Taiwan Tea Connection, right, which works in conjunction with some of the tea research institutes in Taiwan to kind of pull together and pool research and analysis for tea, so that we can have things like our milk oolong, right? So what we've got here is cross sections of both the Asamica, right, subvariety, that large leaf style, and the Sinensis, that small leaf style. And you can see they have shared features, right? It's the same guy, but the distinction here is the mesophyll layer specificity, right? We've got different ratio of palisade to spongy mesophyll. Let's give you some words to go along with those visuals, huh? All right, so the palisade mesophyll layer here. These are each, their own cells. Each of these is its own cell. So the palisade mesophyll, these are the tidy, fussy ones, right? They're in nicely organized little columns, yeah? And they are the ones that take all of the photosynthesis information and transform it. So if the stomata and the vascular bundles are the chefs. The mesophyll is the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So the palisade is where we're able to adapt all of the things that we're photosynthesizing, the light, the air, the water, all the goodies, into the hormones and the volatiles that we need. What you're mostly going to see produced in the palisade mesophyll layer is going to be your volatiles, the aromatics. So this is oils and alcohols that the plant creates to signal when the leaf is bruised or cut, or the flowers have something to say. These are the aromas that give out signals and communicate with each other. And then you also have down in the spongy mesophyll, it acts as a storage for everything that the palisade mesophyll layer creates, but it also is, kind of the main place where the amino acids and sugars are hanging out, right? They hang out for a nice long time. Now, a cool thing that happens in the spongy mesophyll is that everything is just sort of setting, so it's not as volatile, right? As up in the palisade mesophyll layer, it's more stable. When things are sitting in spongy, they're sitting in stasis a little bit, as much as a plant is ever in stasis. And so when we get oxidation of the leaf, what we see is a release, a very dramatic aroma from the palisade mesophyll layer, while the spongy mesophyll gets cellularly degraded and turns into that tannic, flavor. You get the bold, the dry, the earthy, that kind of flavor note comes from the spongy mesophyll. So if you have tasted, right, a high mountain Chinese black tea, and you've tasted an Assam black tea, you know what I'm saying here? Right? The small leaf variety is going to taste and smell much smoother, lighter, more floral, much more complex, more nuanced, whereas the large leaf style is going to have a lot more of that bold, in-your-face, that breakfast tea, raw kind of richness to it. And that's because of this composition of mesophyll versus palisade versus spongy mesophyll layers. So that's very cool, and I wish I had time to talk way more about that. I could spend an hour just on this slide. There we go. Oh, trichomes, my one true love. I'm not shy about that in this talk. Okay, yes, thank you, the Nordic Journal of Botany. Oh, this is a close-up of trichome on a young tea leaf, right? So you see all these little hairs all along here, and here, this is what I'm talking about. There's a bead of caffeine right there. The screen is not as great at capturing that as I would hope, but that little bead of caffeine, that's ready to mess up a bug. So trichomes are so beautiful, and they're so weird, and I love it. So I like that we've got this cross-section of leaf here where you can kind of see a little more zoomed out what it looks like, right? You get that white fuzz. So this is when you get a silver needle white tea. This is the reason you love silver needle, right? Because not only do the trichomes contain all that gorgeous caffeine that we as humans love, but also they have the terpenes, they have these aromatics in them because they're communicating, right? This is the outside. So the communication that the palisade mesophyll layer is attempting to build with all of those volatiles is being transmitted out through follicles on the surface. So when the plant is very, very young, this is a baby brand new leaf. It's so common. You see this high trichome count on the youngest brand new leaf, right? You see it on leaves that are particularly bred for this quality. They like a high trichome count. Some last longer, but they drop off as the leaf matures, and it doesn't need that protection anymore. So it's only really the brand new harvest or the most delicate, tender, vulnerable leaves that even have this on there. I just remember there's words on the screen too. Great. So here's what they are used for. We reflect UV rays, that's why it is shiny, right? We poison our predators. We reduce transpiration. This is where the trichomes are working in conjunction with those stomata, those mouths, right? To kind of cover them up a little bit. Say we don't really need to be letting a ton of water in and out. We don't need to we just need to hang out. We need to maintain right now. Preventing frost damage. It's like a little winter coat. That's very important. And also a part of why silver needle. So the flavors and aromas that come out of this trichome coverage, this is where we get the honey note from our golden monkey, our golden Yunnan, our golden snail, because as these oxidize, they turn that gorgeous gold or coppery color, right? They start silver, and then as it goes from white tea to green to black tea, they turn richer and more golden in color. So Yes, they're giving you that lovely, buttery, almost like cocoa butter note to them. So you'll find some teas that are really trichome heavy that you brew them and this has the aroma of white chocolate. How did this happen? Incredible. So this is one of the places that comes from. And I love them. And then when they're not needed anymore, they can either shrink back into the follicle and die there, or they just kind of shed. They just kind of come off. But when I open a bag of tea and what comes out is a puff of gold dust or silver dust, ooh, like that's what I love. That is what I am looking for personally. I am a trichome fiend. All my favorite teas have a really high trichome presence. So yeah, we love them. Oh, vascular systems. I don't think we talk about xylem and phloem enough in this society. So we're going to today. All right, vascular systems. These guys are so cool. So these are the information superhighway. These guys are how we get all that, photosynthesized carbohydrate, all the nutrients flowing from the stomata, right, up there from the kitchen down to the customers throughout the restaurant, you know what I'm saying, down to the rest of the plant where it's needed. Also, they come up through the roots. We've got xylem and phloem going through every dang part of a plant. These are the veins, the arteries, the capillaries. They go everywhere and they give what they need to give. This is a chart I found on like a high school science note website, and I couldn't find a better one. This one is great. I love this. So we get a really nice demonstration of our happy xylem, which is, I love this. These guys only travel up. Negative pressure. They're like a siphon, pulling good stuff from the dirt all the way up through the rest of the plant. They were previously live cells. They die off, and then they just form kind of a woody stalk. When you see the rings in a tree, that's these guys, all right? They age out and they move out, and they leave behind these hollow husks, and they just move water up and down them. I love that so much. It's the coolest thing. So water and minerals up only from the dirt through the xylem. Now the phloem are more flexible. These guys are the ones that are really working with those stomata. These ones are running dishes from the kitchen. I will keep going back to restaurant metaphors. I was in the industry for 15 years and I still haven't recovered, so here we are. So these guys do move both ways. I love that they have like a little sieve on the end caps between them. And these friends, they move through that turgor. We were talking about turgidity, right? The more water that is in the vascular system, the faster these guys can move nutrients where they need to go. So during dry patches, the phloem can't really do their jobs very well. If they don't have enough water to move nutrients quickly, that's how you get dead plants, right? That's what happens. They can't get the nutrients where they need to go. They can't get the water where it needs to go, so your plants die. But these friends are not only transporting water, they are also transporting those carbohydrates, right? The byproduct of photosynthesis, and they're also moving all of those amino acids, the proteins, all of the hormones that was created in that palisade mesophyll layer. So these are moving everything where it needs to go. All right. And because the plant can adjust, I know every time a cup breaks, so sad. But because the plant can adjust how much water it's intaking through those stomata, when weather conditions are not doing what they're supposed to do at a certain time of year, right? Thank you, climate change / life. The plant can say, oh wait, I need to open the second layer of that stoma to intake more water from the air so that we can move these nutrients faster, because right now it is too dry in here. So we're now not only pulling up water from the ground, we need more from the air as well, right? And vice versa. If there's too much water in the ground, the stomata can just say, no more, no thank you. We do not need any water from the air today because our phloem are already overwhelmed. It's moving way too fast in here. So we love that. We've got friends working in tandem at the top of the leaf, under the ground, and we've got this really complex vascular system that's just doing all the work and adapting as needed. So cool. Oh, phytochemicals. Oh, do we know what this one is? No, not yet. Okay. I'm not surprised. This is a polyphenol. This is one type of polyphenol. So we are going to talk about, and this one is a tannin, I believe. So chemical compounds. These guys regulate hormones, right? So polyphenols they're their own little chemical guy that floats around, and if it's getting too hormonal, they tell the plant to chill it out, right? And if it's not hormonal enough, they pump up the jam. Okay. It's very scientific language we're using here. So their job is to regulate the production of hormones, which we know as flavonoids, plant hormones, right? Subset of polyphenols. And also we help to precipitate the proteins, right? So tannins specifically are the guy in charge of that. The reason your tea is bitter is because it's using those tannins to tell the plant that it needs to be making more protein in the kitchen, right? And that's what that signal tastes like to us. And some of us, we love our tannins. I want a plant that is protein deprived so that it'll taste more bitter because I like that. That's what we like. So our farmers are out here giving plants specific signals intentionally to either overload or deprive them of vital nutrients so that they'll have a hormonal response that gives us a certain flavor. So we do have farms that are breeding and intentionally plucking for a high tannic profile. High tannic profile is very popular in Ceylon teas, right? We like that astringency because it's designed to pair really well with fruits and flowers, right? The local cuisine. So what we see is a lot of teas that are intentionally deprived of proteins, because then the tea will say, more tannins, please. All right, great. So everything has a reason. All right, so this, yes, they stress the plants out. This is going to be so fun. We're going to see what it does and why it does it, right? So if what you want is a tea that is higher in tannins, you're going to want to look for farms that are intentionally stressing out their plants. They're going around, they're bruising it, they're making sure that they're depriving it of that protein, all of these things. So this is good to know. You know that if that's going on, you're going to like the tea that comes out of it. Or if you're making your own tea at home, this is good to know. If you're doing damage to your plant over the course of its lifetime, it will get more bitter because you're harming its method of intaking and producing protein. It's going to come back at you with a higher tannic concentration to account for that inside of itself. All right, let's look at this friend, another mystery guest, amino acids. Yes, so these friends are hormones that their job is to tell the plant when to do what growth phase, right? Amino acids are the communicators that are moving through the phloem, and they're saying to different parts of the plant, okay, it's time to shoot out that taproot. It's time to flower. It's time to produce a seed. It's time to sprout new growth. All of that is coming from amino acids. And what they contribute, whereas our polyphenols are giving us those more dry, bitter tannic notes, the amino acids are giving us the umami. This is where we're getting the sweet, earthy. This is where we're getting the smooth, rich flavors from, right? And a lot of that is coming from our L-theanine, which is something that is often marketed to us as also one of the most beneficial health aspects of plants, right? So love that. If you know that you're drinking a tea that has a really bold, smooth, sweet, earthy, rich profile, you know it's high in L-theanine compared to other teas that don't have as much of that note present, right? So there we go. Yes, and then this friend production is stimulated in response to environmental indicators. So this is, there's not enough of a certain nutrient. This is, we didn't get enough sunlight this season. It was too cloudy. This is, oh no, someone put a shade over me for several weeks of my life, matcha. And that's how we produce this, right? So environmental indicators are telling it, oh, it's time to, have a hormone shift. It's time to produce more hormones. It's time to do this, time to do that. Self-preservation. I am being threatened. Now I will become sweet. Don't harm me, is what the plant does. So there we go. If you wanted to make a sweeter tea for yourself at home, this is another one. Shade is a big part of that. Shading is going to prevent a lot of that photosynthesis and make your tea sweeter. Let's look at our aromatics. I love these buddies. All right. So here we are. This is the friend that makes the smell, right? So this is like, think about when you cut grass and you get that cut grass smell. What that really is essentially the plant screaming, right? This is agriculture is violent, okay, on a cellular level. But that's what we love as humans. We love it. So when you cut grass and you get that smell, that's the plant responding with a hormonal release, that aromatic, release of volatiles that is telling the surrounding grass, look out. Oh no, my head got cut off. So that's what that is. So when we are bruising tea, right, that's why we get that gorgeous floral profile. That's coming from the aromatics here, yeah? So these come in the form of alcohols and oils, and terpenes are another one that you'll see dripping off of those trichomes. Oh my gosh, and that's not exclusive to tea. The aromatics and the trichomes are a broad spectrum botanical thing. Very, very popular in cannabis discussion. They're a really big part of that as well. People are breeding for those qualities there, as well as in herbs. You get a lot of that in the mint and nettle world. But this is what makes the plant smell grassy and floral. And it does have a purpose of communication. That's the whole point of volatiles. The way that your tea smells is your tea talking. Right? This is how plants talk. So when you do bruise a tea leaf, and you'll see when people are producing oolongs, for example, a great example of this, a certain degree of bruising is necessary to release those florals, the floral aromas that we are so in love with in our oolongs, particularly get into your Taiwanese and your Fujian oolongs. And oh my gosh, the aromas are wild because they're bruising them and letting those aromatics really take some damage. So we do get our environmental indicators here, of course, right? And the most important environmental indicator is violence in this particular case, right? We're getting bruised, we're getting damage. Often after like a really heavy rain, a monsoon, something like that, there will be this intense wave of grassy and floral aroma because the plants have been bruised, right? And so it's releasing all of that. But we do also breed for this because one of the most important things a consumer is looking for in a tea is aroma. Yeah, that's why every time someone comes to my booth, they're, looking at a tea, tell me about this. No, you need to smell this. You need to smell this. You really do. That's how you know what kind of a relationship you're about to have with that cup of tea. So people are breeding for this, and this is a huge part. The aromatic specifically composition is a huge part of why Taiwan has a database of patented genetic codes because we're breeding for super specific qualities here, a certain ratio of our terpenes and hexenes to give a certain aroma so that when you go and you're drinking, say like a magnolia blossom oolong, you know what that's going to smell like because that's been genetically predetermined in a lab. Yes, by beautiful, brilliant scientists that have figured out how to make tea smell and taste the way it does. So I love them for that. So that's our aromatics. All right. Oh, we know this friend. I bet at least 3 of you have a necklace with this molecule on it. This is our caffeine. Now, caffeine we think of as having a bitter taste. And like technically, okay, but there's not enough in it, for you to really taste that bitterness as caffeine. A lot of the time when we think of the flavor of caffeine, we're thinking of coffee, right, as a society, as a Northwestern society especially. And we think of caffeine as having that kind of bitter, acrid flavor. And it kind of does a little bit, but that's not really as important as, the other things that we were looking at are polyphenols, creating those bitter, bold, earthy flavors. Mostly, if you were able to taste caffeine, you would have already consumed too much. If you can taste it, it's already too late, basically. But this friend is designed to be poison. This is designed to poison insects. So that's why it exists. It's beautiful, we love it, and it messes us right on up. But the way that it is stimulated is by those hormones that are traveling through the phloem on their little, water slide, and telling the plant, okay, it's time to shoot out a new leaf, right? It's time to grow this season's crop. So, okay, start pumping up our caffeine production. It's time to start creating that so that as the new leaf blooms, we are just packing it full of poison and try to give it the best chance at life we possibly can. But this is also the reason why, okay, how many of you have had a Xiaomei white tea? Xiaomei? Ever? Oh, excellent. But how many of you know silver needle? Yes, great. That's what I thought. Okay, so silver needle white tea, right? We know is absolutely jam-packed with this bad boy because it is the babiest. Silver needle has been overwintered, right? It's grown, it's allowed to grow all the way all through the winter, and then it is the last thing done right before the new growth is going to come out for those beautiful spring picks, that 2 leaves in a bud for the spring pick. But your silver needle is only 1 bud, right? So it's got all this caffeine packed in it, and literally the next 2 leaves down, the 2 leaves next to that bud, that's your Xiaomei, right? That's the next grade of leaf down. It has to be cut, it has to be pruned so that we can make room for the new growth to come out. But all the caffeine that did exist, last season's caffeine is all in that silver needle because it was just trying to get through until the next season. Whereas the Xiaomei then, even just the next leaf down, has a maximum of like 20 milligrams per serving. Right? Your silver needle's sitting up closer to 80, 85. It's way up there. So because it's not needed, those next leaves have had a chance to get waxy. They've had a chance to get tough. They're beat up. They're ugly. No one likes them. They usually just get composted, except in Fuding City, the birthplace of white tea, where they do actually cut them, process them, take care of them, age them, and incredible stuff. But that's so nice. You can actually have from the same harvest, the same crop, that little needle that will make you see through space and time. And then right next to it, its sibling leaf on the branch, mellow. I drink it as a nighttime tea. It's fine. And so you can see like the stimulation here really is who needs it the most, who is the most in danger at any time from environmental factors. And the hormones are so intelligent, they can tell the plant, here's exactly where to send that, and we send it on down the phloem. Oh, in early life, there we go. Thank you, Sal. Oh boy. Here's an amino acid uptake chart. Who's ready? I told you we were talking about science today. This is some dweeby stuff right here. I had the slideshow peer reviewed, I'll have you know. That's how much I was excited to talk to you about science today. So this is from my personal favorite publication, Food Research International. That is my favorite magazine. So we are going to look at putting it all together, right? All together. That wasn't me. That was one of my crew. So we have seen that we're responding to complex stimuli, right? And we're responding with a quickness. The plant gets a signal, it gets a million signals all the time, every day, and it has to be managing all of these aspects, right? So what we see here is kind of the ratio, what makes a total tea aroma or flavor. We see over here, these are aromatics, right? We get our complex, I don't want to use the cursor. It's huge. There we go. We get our complex aromatics. These guys that are creating our floral aromas, even our milky aromas, that kind of sweet, fruity aromatics that we get. All of those alcohols and oils are happening here, right? And then on the other side, we're getting our grassy kind of flavors there. So we've got our aromatics across the board here. Yes, that's important. It has to balance itself out against those polyphenols, balance itself out against those amino acids. So all of these things are happening at different times for different reasons. And what we come up with is a total ratio that gives you your end product, right? Geez, that's a lot of information, and it's so yummy. We love it. So let's take a look at some of these things. If you love, this is where you can actually take this and apply it in the real world, okay? You have homework. I'm giving you homework now. If you love Darjeeling, Ceylon, Lady Grey, what do those things all have in common? They're dry and floral, moderate body, moderate astringency, and a clean floral citric aroma, right? If you like one of those things, you are likely to enjoy the others, okay? So why do they have those notes? Because now we have a little bit of the education, right? We can start putting it together here. We know that if they're high altitude, we're going to have that smaller leaf style because there's not as much oxygen. And because that smaller leaf style, there's not as much space for all of those nutrients to spread out, which means that we have a particularly high concentration of polyphenols, which is going to give us that kind of grassy, dry, astringent composition, right? We know that in these regions, these styles of leaf, it's popular to cut rather than leave the leaf whole. That makes a difference because the waxy coating is blocking those tannins from extracting too rapidly in hot water. When the leaf is cut, it's game on, you know? The tannins are out there very quickly. So you know that with a cut leaf, you're going to have a drier, more bitter cup than with a whole leaf. So if you're looking at your Darjeeling, the traditional style, being small leaf, high altitude cut leaf, you know it's going to be dry, floral noted, and have rapid tannic extraction. The same is true with these other styles popularly. So here's your homework. If this is you, here's your homework. You want to go source your tea from the Anhui region of China, which matches these general environmental conditions. Colombia is doing some fascinating things riffing off of Ceylon teas, but it's a totally different terroir, but kind of cool, similar production. Go to Indonesia. Indonesia and Sri Lanka are right dang next door to each other. If you like Ceylon tea, you will like Indonesian tea, right? There's your homework. And I hope also, if this is you, take a picture of this because these are the things that you actually like. And these are the notes you need to be looking for when you're tea shopping. All right. If you love, this is the breakfast tea crowd, right? You've got your Yunnan Gold, your Assam, your Irish breakfast. What you love is malty, rich, low astringency, right? Not too quick to go bitter. You want to be able to brew a strong cup without it going dry and bitter on you. Earthy notes, a gently honeyed finish. Takes cream and sugar well, right? That's what you like. Now, why does it exist like that? The Assamica varietal, that large leaf style, is going to have low nuance and full body because that ratio of our mesophyll layers, right? So we get a lot of those amino acids concentrated in the spongy mesophyll layer. As they oxidize, they give us that earthy, rich kind of flavor profile. Jungle shade means high L-theanine, right? So you get those smooth, lovely, earthy, sweet notes. Please also check out these styles from around, well, China, as it turns out, but, there are other regions doing similar styles too. Golden Snails is a tea for you. Unsmoked Loksong Sushang, Kimun black tea. Okay? All right, now our last recommendation round. If you love Dragonwell, Sencha, gunpowder, what you really love, smooth but dry green teas with mineral-forward flavor, moderate body, and complex, distinctly grassy aroma. Okay, so sun-grown. We just saw an example of a shade-grown tea a minute ago, right? Shadier region equals a little sweeter and smoother and more earthy. Sunny region equals drier and grassier, right? Yeah, so we get, very specific, high Z3 hexene. Right? Our aromatics are getting really specific here. But when you're in a sun-grown region, so this is why all the tea in Kenya tends to be extremely dry and grassy, right? We get into our Kenyan purple tea has become very popular the last few years, and what people love about it, this reminds me of a gunpowder. Yeah, I bet. I bet it does. Their terroir conditions are remarkably similar, despite being on totally different continents. And then, this is the smaller leaf varietal again, which means you're going to have a higher volatile content. You get more of that grassy, clean aroma that you love, while being lighter in body than the Assamica varietal would give you. These also, see also, the Kenyan purple, yes, Kyobancha, that is a white tea, but it's such a specific style. I think you will love it. And here's a bunch of letters and numbers. Okay, so SFTGFOP-1, by which I mean superfine tippy golden flowery orange pico first flush. This is a classification that usually applies to Darjeeling black teas. You can sometimes find a green one. If you love sencha and you encounter a green Darjeeling with that many letters after its name, you want that tea, I promise you. So there you go. Once you understand why the plant does what it does, it opens your whole world to more exploration. You can start saying, hey, I'll probably like this other thing. In conclusion, it is complicated, Yeah, but when you know why they're doing what they're doing, then you can start to search for that. And particularly as climate change continues to cause what we call biome shift, right? Regions that used to grow a certain style cannot successfully grow those styles anymore because their ongoing weather conditions have shifted too far from the original pattern. So those tea styles just don't do well anymore. Now we're seeing, coming from heritage regions, we see Darjeeling is now making silver needle. What? Darjeeling is getting real weird with oolongs these days, and I am into it. And meanwhile, we've got yellow tea coming out of Australia. France is growing tea. Anything's possible. Hawaii is doing some beautiful Japanese-style teas these days. And, we do have that Colombian farm that's growing Sri Lankan cultivars very successfully in the rainforest. So, if you are open to new things from old regions, I think you'll find some really beautiful stuff going on, and now you'll have kind of a sense of what's happening there. So you'll start to see things like, tea grown in Bangladesh maybe a decade ago tasted completely different than it does today, and a lot of that has to do with shifting weather patterns. We get these formerly arid region now being hit with more monsoons more violently than ever, right? So now we've got floods, and the plants have to adjust to a much higher water content than they're used to, which means they have to completely mutate, they have to shift, and new cultivars being grown in old regions all the time. So in conclusion, you can't ever learn everything about tea, and that's so awesome, right? Because if you're open to it, you can keep doing this forever. You can just keep learning new things about tea every day of your life, and you will never have tasted all the tea, but you can try. Right? You can join me in that endeavor. I've been doing this for 20 years and I still am learning new things every single day, and it's thrilling. So there we go. I can't fit every single thing I want to say into 1 hour. It's impossible. However, this is what I do. You come see me online, we'll get real in depth. We get even weirder about plants than I just did at you. So you come see us online, or in the shop or whatever. Honestly, come see me after class. We'll talk with you about botany at length. Also, email me if you want a copy of this slideshow, because not everyone's taking notes. Yes, I know we got some note takers frantically trying to keep up, but I am always happy to share my resources. I'm happy to share my environmental, journal entries that I'm sourcing my material from. If you want to get real nerdy about it, I'll send you some journal entries. But yeah, just contact me after class. And I am always happy to speak on this more. I think maybe, oh wow, yeah, that was perfectly, holy crap, you guys, we did it. They told us we could have the space till 2, so if there are any Q&A, please do. Otherwise, yeah, carry on. Enjoy your caffeine.